Welcome to The Art of Growth. This is Jim Zartman, and today Joel Hubbard and I are kicking off a new season, and we're getting a little bit of a head start on a new year. For several months, we've been talking about what to focus on in 2025, and we want to lean into talking about meaningful work and your purpose. And so today we are going to set up where we're headed. There's only a couple weeks left to sign up for the next round of certification beginning in January of 2025. If you want to go deeper with the Enneagram for personal or professional reasons, our IEA certified program in the Enneagram is just about the best thing you can do to make that happen. You can sign up at www.theartofgrowth.org. Also go there to sign up for our newsletter. We have a series that's going to be coming out that have ideas and tips and learnings to go deeper with this series. You can also go there to take a free Enneagram test or instincts test, as well as reach out to us about trainings for your organization. But for now, let's go ahead and jump in with this week's episode, introducing meaningful work. So we're going to be turning a bit of a corner for a time over the next year, maybe a few months. We don't exactly know, but we have some things that we feel we need to talk about that are important to talk about. And what a lot of people know us as is like an Enneagram podcast, right? So that's how people discovered us. That's how most people found out about us. And that's still what people maybe think of us primarily as. And we're always wanting to be resistant to being kind of the typecast thing, because this is not our only contribution. We think about things in a lot more broad context. And we think about the Enneagram as a huge component of helping people understand identity, because that has to be the starting point before you can go through what our whole work looks like, which is this identity piece, the community piece, and the purpose piece. It's supposed to move through all of these so that all of them make up a complete life. You don't really have a complete life if you stop at identity. And even if you stop at community, it's like there's purpose, there's meaningful work that is here for you to do that is going to give you a sense of fulfillment. And the fulfillment is not created by any one of those components, but the whole. And so we want to do a series, a season, spend some time looking toward meaningful work. But there's a reason for it. There is a trajectory that this stuff is supposed to take. Mm-hmm. I feel like we need to give that setup to understand why we're going to be talking about some of the things we're going to be talking about over the coming time here.
Well, and I think for those of you who have done a lot of Enneagram work, and that is something that's very important to you, what I want to say is this is going to expand that. I'm convinced that the Enneagram has infinite uses. I really do believe that.
Yeah.
It's an orientation. It's like a map. You're going to go to a lot of different places in your life. And that understanding of how you engage with all those different experiences in life has a lot to do with your Enneagram type.
Yeah.
But we don't want to just stare at the Enneagram. We want to see through it at all of these other things like meaning, purpose, community, because it is so powerful at helping us to understand what our unique contribution is in this world.
This is why I actually get worried when people are too much in the identity piece. And we've talked about this before, when there's too much time trying to explore like the who am I piece. And I think a lot of people stagnate at that point. And then it doesn't actually bleed into their relationships around them. They're like, I keep working on myself, but my external relationships, my community, it's not very good. And I don't really have a sense of my purpose or the contribution, the unique light that I'm here to bring. And so I can end up kind of circling the well around this identity piece. And that produces the antithesis of growth.
Yeah.
It actually becomes growth material, books, self-help books, podcasts, anything. It becomes just another form of entertainment that actually ends up leading to where we feel shame about the things we're not doing, but we keep looking for an answer. And that combination like actually inoculates us from transformational growth where it leads to something.
Yeah.
And yes, I love how you're saying it's the tools are things that we look through so that we can make our unique contribution. Because I do think that's the purpose, that we feel like we have something to offer and we need to get outside of ourselves to do it.
Yeah.
And I often joke when I talk about how I came to the Enneagram that I came to it trying to figure out what was wrong with other people, which is partly true because I did want to understand an aspect of that. But I also saw there was this question of like wanting to have impact.
Yeah.
And looking at, my last several years of leadership and going, why was I really effective with this person or with this person, but not over here? Why did I feel like I failed this person, but I did really well with them? And so the easy explanation was, well, it's them. That was the easy explanation. But after I saw this pattern, and it seemed to be a certain kind of person that I was really struggling to lead. A mentor of mine joked, he says, well, I guess then you're just going to be a coach and a leader for these types of people. Very tongue-in-cheek, because it was a challenge. It was a challenge to say, well, you need to see this a little more broadly. And that gap between my desired impact and my actual impact required work of self-awareness and understanding my identity and how I functioned so that I could produce better results that were more in line with like the true heart of what I felt like I wanted to do in the world.
So there's this saying that many of us have heard, that life is a teacher, or that everything is a teacher in life if we are good students. We've heard all sorts of variations of that, of roughly that quote. And all kinds of people in the self-help world, including me, have said, oh, absolutely. And then what I take is I take that and I go, yeah, this is what life has taught me. These people are bad people, or these people, because they may have said some criticisms, they may have made some remarks about me that I didn't like, or they see things differently than I do. And because of that, I can alienate their voice and try again to figure out, who am I? The identity, like, who am I separate from these people? And I do think that we miss out a lot when we do that, because the voices of people, even people that say things that aren't said kindly, but has some truth to it, that helps us to then understand, who am I, identity, and what is my contribution to the world? Without that negative criticism, how are we going to get there?
Yeah.
And we think, well, because people who positively affirm the things that you are. Yeah, there's the positive affirmations. There's this sort of, here are the aspects that are shiny and that are great about you. But without the contrasting, we don't exactly know what that fully means. If someone says, oh, you're such a warm person and, love your warmth. And then someone else says, I can't stand your passivity. It's like, well, if all you ever heard was warmth, would you ever change the fact that sometimes you're too passive?
Yeah. Oh, they're so easygoing. They're so go with the flow.
Yeah,
it's like, and then someone else is like, can you take some action? Like, what do you really think? Why aren't you being honest?
Right.
Why aren't you being authentic?
Right. And that's why when both of those are integrated, you get a sense at which my gift is my warmth, perhaps. It's one of my strengths, one of my offerings to the world. But can I do that with intentionality? And can I do that at times being more assertive?
Yeah.
Because there are times where something does need to be addressed, and my warmth will just turn to mush and not be effective unless I engage and deal with an issue. And then my warmth has impact in that situation. This is why I'm saying, I don't know that you can only get positive information. In fact, I'm sure of this, and actually make your way towards your greater and greater discovery of your unique contribution. Though it's always a discovery, but really get there and do something impactful in the world.
Yeah. Well, this goes back to, we talk about identity as not just discovered, but created.
Yeah.
That's an important component. But in the creation, cannot be separated from others.
No,
so otherwise,
absolutely.
you're just creating an imaginary version of yourself.
Yeah. And
then you become a caricature instead of a fully human person.
Well, here's a caricature of that. We've all seen this. It's like, it's, kind of terrible, but the music shows, contestants get up and sing, and
oh yeah, like American Idol or Talent.
And so there's so many of them, and somebody will stand up there and sing it. Well, American Idol, at least, anyways, at the beginning, it was almost like a part of the, well, it was part of the show, part of the entertainment, is to have somebody who can't sing to save their lives. Like, it's just awful. But that person was so sure that that was their contribution to the world, their gift.
Yes.
And of course, the rest of us watching this were saying, have you not heard yourself, or have you not listened to the feedback other people give you? And it's like, well, yeah, but now turn that towards yourself, and, I turn it towards me.
Yeah.
In what ways am I not listening, right? In what ways have I decided, no, I don't care. This is what I believe about me. This is my identity. It doesn't matter what you say.
This is my dream.
Don't mess with my. Yeah. And and I've heard the saying that if you can do anything you set your mind to, and don't let anybody tell you can't, and all this other stuff. I say, okay, there's a lot to that that's so important, and we say it ourselves all the time. Don't let anybody stop you. Keep moving. We say that all because we believe it. However, it has to be mixed with that negative feedback that also says, hey, this isn't your thing.
Yeah. I think a lot of times some of those people are being told the truth for the first time in their lives.
Yeah.
Because it was in the bubble. So you created this identity of yourself in this bubble, and then you kind of come into this context. I don't know if I ever told you this, but I actually did an American Idol audition.
You?
When I was like in my early 20s.
Wow.
So I was in Columbus, Ohio, and I was in the most well-known commercial, Ford commercial in Ohio at the time, that played like during Friends and all this stuff. And that got certain media attention. Then they asked me to be on this show called Give Me the Mic, which was like this singing show. And I was on the show. And as a part of that, they're like, well, are you going to audition for American Idol? I was like, hey, I'm on a roll. Why don't I go for it? And so I went to the audition, and it was actually in a stadium. So this is just one of the locations they go to. And it was in a football stadium.
Jeez.
And you're there for hours. And this is what they say at the beginning. The guy comes out, the producer comes out, and this isn't any of the main people you see on the TV show, because they've actually already picked the top 10 before they even go to those auditions. Spoiler alert. But the producer comes on, he says, we want the very best of you and the very worst of you.
Oh, man. Wow.
That they tell the audience that.
Wow.
So if you're phenomenal or you're absolutely horrible, those are the people they are most interested in.
Yep.
If you're really good, they're not interested in.
Yeah.
In fact, a friend of mine who went with me, she got through 3 rounds of the producer, and then they just told her, you're not really the look we're going for this year. Because if she would have been on the show, she absolutely would have been in that top, 5. Phenomenal talent. But it's just so funny that all of those people in that stadium are like, this is me. I am a singer.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting with all of them, and you literally walk up in a row. It's like 10 seconds at a time. Next, 10, next. And it's just like that. And all of these people are just walking up so hopeful and then walking out so dejected.
Yeah.
But I think it's beautiful when you have those moments. I think it's an absolutely transformational in a positive way when the identity you think you have is resisted, because it gives you the chance to explore who you really are.
Mm-hmm.
And I always think of, this is years and years ago, I was at church and this woman got up and she sang, and it was phenomenal. And the speaker who got up after her, he said, I want you all to know that you are as good at something as she is at that.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent.
And that was so beautiful about it. And I think so many times we prop up the false thing that we think we want.
Yep.
And the pursuit of that actually keeps us from our contribution.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a bit of a tangent, but it's a fun story.
Yeah. The meaningfulness to, I think, all of this is such an important topic for us to be exploring. Yeah, as has been said by many brilliant thinkers on this, is that there's a crisis of meaning in our world right now. And I'm convinced that that's true. And I do want to say a couple of things about kind of a counter to our position on meaning here, because to say that meaning is one thing or another thing, I think is going to be risky for us if we do that.
Right. We don't want to be that dogmatic.
No.
Yeah.
Meaning is, in fact, some of you've lost any sense of meaning to life because you've been whacked pretty hard by something. When tragedy hits us, meaning goes out the window, meaning falls apart. When we experience a significant change of any kind in our lives, I think it has to be significant enough, because our stubbornness around holding on to meaning is something it's important for our psychological well-being, right? People who are too much into the deconstruction world, which I was very much a part of for quite a while. If you're too leaning heavily into deconstruction, you end up spiraling downward to where nothing has any meaning anymore.
Right.
And what you discover is you might be right, but you are also depressed. And then you can justify your depression by it being true and stay in that space.
Yeah, because we never stop. Is it right or is it helpful?
Yeah.
We just stop at, is it right or wrong?
Is it right or wrong?
Because that binary is what actually keeps us actually stuck. Instead of saying, well, what's actually helpful?
Right, because that's also a part of our lived experience. And, in humility, you have to say, well, I think I'm right, but what if I'm not? And what if there's more to living life, than just thinking about life? Like, as I live, what is the production of my life? Am I producing fruit? Am I a person that is generally leaning towards giving my life for the good, the greater good, like doing something good on this planet?
Yeah, where it's nourishing both to me and to others. I'm
absolutely
providing nourishment to myself.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it, but I'm also providing nourishment to others.
Yeah. And I think that's where the meaning then has a lot more looseness to it and continues to evolve. Mm-hmm. It's not something that we just have this meaning to life that's really narrow. And I think that's a lot of what we let go of through difficulties, through tragedies, through, significant epiphanies that we have. And it's like, oh, that was narrower than it needed to be. And then it expands, right? But I think overall we can say, if the aim of our life is for the good, is to believe that there is good worth fighting for, rather than ending up in some sort of dark, cynical mindset, prolonged one that doesn't shift. I mean, we all visit those places. To do that, to aim our lives towards that, to aim our lives towards something that produces good in me, produces good in others, as best as I can, as much as I know how. I do believe that is a kind of a universal belief and practice that we could hold on to and manifest in infinite varieties of ways, because we're so diverse as people. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think I just wanted to communicate in this beginning one that the reason we do all of this work of identity is so that we do all the things you're just talking about. We're nourishing others. We're bearing fruit. We're doing things where we, even when we get knocked down, we discover something really meaningful. And that happens a lot. A lot of times people's greatest contribution comes after their greatest pain, loss, hurt, a loss of who they thought they were. That there is something about that process that actually builds self-awareness, that builds the person who can build everything else, as we say in our new book coming out soon. You build the person who can build everything else.
That's such a good point, because that's the integration of the identity and the purpose that we're going to be talking about, right? Yeah.
Yes. The purpose of doing the work of identity is that you can build the person who can build everything else.
Yeah. That's exactly what we are trying to convey through that book, but also in the work that we do with individual clients, with companies. It's like, you can't separate out these parts anymore. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
And we're seeing it over and over again, people that burn out and don't enjoy their work or try to put so much meaning into their work, and then, they lose something else on the other side of it. I believe the integration of it is like, who are you?
Yeah.
And how can you show up in your work more fully? Because when you do, it's less of a one-to-one just eking out an existence. Like, I produce and then I get the output of that production.
Yeah.
And I think it turns into something which I've kind of coined a phrase of going from production to reproduction. It's like it's more organic. It's like one seed goes into the ground and produces a whole entire apple tree full of seeds, And I think when we're living more that way, we start to see fruitfulness in a lot of areas where we're showing up more like ourselves in this world, and it benefits people our social life is benefited by it. Our own self, we feel benefited by it. Somebody does something good to us, we return that. And it's just this ongoing, fruitful way of living that then you show up at work. And imagine you show up at work from as a person who is experiencing a more fruitful life. Well, how do you think that's going to go? How do you think people are going to respond to you, around you? People who work with you, for you, people who you work for, right? It's like, wow, you're a really enjoyable person to work with and to have around. There's a distinct difference. And for some reason, it starts to create and generate more of a positivity in the space. People feel safer around you. I was asked that question the other day, being vetted by a company that is curious about working with us or hiring us for some work. And it's like, well, how do you create safety for people? That was one of the questions. It's like, well, you create safety by being a person who treats people like they're people. Like, there's nothing wrong with you. I'm not better than you. There's no patronizing approach. And I think that then when you can approach people with that sense of humility and that sense of positivity towards them, people feel safe in the space. People feel positive in the space. And then what happens to their work production? Yeah. Right? So I'm painting a bit of a, utopian picture here, but it is good to have that image in our mind. Like, what would it look like if I lived with a greater sense of meaning? What would it look like if I understood my contribution, my unique, how I'm designed? That's the identity piece. Who am I? How am I designed? What is my relationship to the world? This is where identity starts to lose its contours, its definitive contours. It's like my identity, but as it relates to whom, like my identity at home is one thing. Some people boast that they're like the same way everywhere. It's like, well, then you're probably not doing the relationship really well because if you do relationship well, you adapt. Exactly. Like, my wife has a certain way of interacting with me and me with her that's going to be very different than the way I interact with, say, you. Yeah. Or people at the gym. A lot of it is when you're learning to interact with these social groups, you're recognizing there's a different way, and that's authentic. Yeah. Unless you're lying and self-deceiving, that's different. Right. But if you're recognizing this is an adaptation I must take on, then your identity starts to develop and more parts of you form. And of course, we'll talk more about that down the road a bit. But that's, to me, I think, having that balance that you talked about, or that integration between identity and purpose, is really where I think we're going as a society. I really feel that. I've observed that. I'm hearing that more. And I think that we need a return to meaning. We've been in that space of just so much meaninglessness, so much isolation. People feel alone. People don't know what it is that they really want to do. They don't know what they love. How many times have you heard that and run into that? Yeah. I asked a client the other day, what do you love? No answer.
The last two that I've had, it was all about looking for this, looking at their own story, the patterns that they've had, the things that they've always cared about, the skills they've collected along the way, and then using this to compile where they're going and where they need to go. And it's amazing. I'm like, that's the question you're coming with for coaching right now. It seems to be very important to people right now. So I do think that there's an energy moving in the direction that we're intuiting. This is why we want to talk about this.
I'm excited when I find that there's something that we can do something about. Yeah. Right? This is not an unsolvable
We feel
problem.
We have a contribution to that space.
Yeah, definitely. Because it's because it's our story. I don't talk from a place of I'm a guru and I figured this out. No, man, I'm a student of this. This has been my existential crisis for years of struggling.
And we also know
identity.
the losing what you thought you were here all about, losing it, and then having to find something else and starting over later in life. All this stuff that I think a lot of people are facing is exactly what we've kind of dealt with. Yeah. I'm excited for this whole series. So come back next week and we're gonna tell you the meaning of life.
Yes, we're gonna answer that big
We're gonna answer the meaning of life.
Oh
question.
Man. We should get a lot of downloads of this one.
That's right. We're going to tell you next week. The meaning of life. Here it comes. So thank you for listening. You can follow us on Instagram at just Art of Growth, and leaving us a review on iTunes or sharing this episode with someone is the best way to support our work. Sign up for the newsletter or coaching at theartofgrowth.org. So keep up with us through this process and begin to take notes as you start to chart out a trajectory, having a deeper understanding of your identity, your community and sense of belonging, and your purpose, which we will continue to unpack together. Grace and growth, my friends.